Beneath the desert sands lie entire cities that vanished from human memory. The ancient Levant was a melting pot of empires and ideas, a place where the first alphabets were carved and mighty kingdoms rose only to be swallowed by time. Why do these lost cities still captivate us? They are far more than ruins. They are time capsules preserving stories of innovation, conflict, and cultural exchange that fundamentally shaped our world. In this journey, we will uncover 25 astonishing discoveries, from a forgotten port that revolutionized writing to a metropolis that mastered beekeeping millennia ago. You will learn exactly how archaeologists use everything from broken pottery to satellite images to resurrect these buried tales, revealing how each find rewrites a chapter of our shared human history. We will explore why a civilization as powerful as Ugarit collapsed seemingly overnight, and what a giant's hometown tells us about biblical legends. What do you believe is the most fragile part of a civilization's legacy? This narrow coastal strip acted as the world's first great crossroads. Wedged between the Mediterranean Sea and the vast Arabian desert, the Levant was a bustling corridor where the chariots of pharaohs met the merchant caravans from Mesopotamia. Think of it not as a barrier but as a vibrant bridge. Empires did not merely pass through, they collided, traded, and left indelible marks upon the land. The very geography dictated the flow of history. Fertile coastal plains supported rich agricultural cities, while the inland highlands became fortresses, and the harsh deserts to the east defined a formidable boundary. Running like a spine through this varied landscape was the King's Highway, an ancient trade route that moved more than just spices and silvers. It carried languages, religious beliefs, and revolutionary technologies. A clay tablet found in the royal archives of Ugarit, for example, does not just record a simple transaction. It reveals a complex diplomatic treaty between rival powers, a fragile agreement etched in mud that sought to manage the very tensions born from this convergence. Historians like Dr. Eric Klein emphasize that this constant interaction made the region a crucible of innovation. It was here, amid this cultural pressure cooker, that the simplified alphabet was developed, a tool for merchants that would eventually democratize writing and change human communication forever. But this position of privilege also made the Levant profoundly vulnerable. A shift in climate, a new trade route, or the ambition of a foreign emperor could unravel centuries of prosperity in a generation. How does this ancient interconnectedness reflect our own globalized world, where ideas and crises spread with similar speed? Understanding this dynamic landscape is the first step to unearthing why its lost cities hold such profound secrets. That romantic image of an explorer brushing sand from a carved pillar captures only a fraction of the truth. A lost city is not merely a ruin, it is a place where memory itself was severed from the historical record. These were vibrant communities that vanished from written history, their stories silenced by natural disaster, the ravages of war, or simple abandonment, creating a void that lasted for millennia. In the context of the ancient Levant, this definition encompasses a vast spectrum. It includes Jericho, one of the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities, which nonetheless experienced profound periods of obscurity where its grander history was forgotten. It also describes a place like Mari, a magnificent Mesopotamian-influenced city-state whose mud brick palaces were completely buried by desert sands, its very name erased until modern archaeologists gave it back its voice. So how do experts formally define such a place? Archaeologists look for a combination of clues, the primary one being its absence in later historical texts. A city that was once a major power, mentioned in the records of its rivals, simply drops from all accounts. Then there is the physical evidence of burial, deep layers of sediment that sealed structures and streets, preserving them in a time capsule. The final piece is the moment of rediscovery, which can be as dramatic as a systematic dig or as accidental as a farmer's plow striking stone. This is what separates a lost city from one that is merely ancient. It is the narrative arc of disappearance and revival. Consider Catalhoyuk in Anatolia, a sprawling Neolithic settlement mysteriously abandoned, likely due to environmental shifts, its story waiting over 9,000 years to be told. The emotional allure of this recovery is undeniable. Today, technology like LIDAR, which uses laser pulses to map terrain, can reveal the ghostly outlines of entire city layouts hidden beneath forests or fields. Yet this power comes with profound ethical responsibility. Excavating a site means disturbing it forever, and many locations hold deep cultural or spiritual significance for descendant communities, requiring sensitive collaboration. Sometimes the most monumental discoveries happen entirely by chance. The entire community of Qumran and its priceless library of Dead Sea Scrolls was unveiled to the modern world because a Bedouin shepherd, searching for a lost goat, threw a stone into a cave and heard the sound of breaking pottery. What does this cycle of loss and recovery tell us about the fragility of our own legacy? It suggests that civilizations, no matter how mighty, can be reduced to whispers, and that every shattered pot or buried wall is a plea from the past not to be forgotten. The plow struck stone with a jarring clang, and the farmer's ordinary day ended. He had just uncovered the edge of a forgotten tomb, a chance find that would pull an entire city back from oblivion. This was the moment Ugarit was reborn. Located on the coast of modern-day Syria, this Bronze Age port was a humming cosmopolitan center between the 14th and 12th centuries before the Common Era. Its warehouses brimmed with Cypriot copper and Egyptian gold, and its streets echoed with a dozen different languages. But its true treasure, the one that would shake the foundations of history, lay buried in the form of clay tablets. French archaeologists took over the site, and their systematic excavations revealed something far more valuable than gold, a complete royal archive. These weren't just inventory lists. They were myths, legal codes, and diplomatic letters, the entire intellectual and administrative life of a city frozen in time. The most earth-shattering find was the script itself. The scribes of Ugarit had perfected one of the world's earliest alphabets. Before this, writing was a complex skill, using hundreds of symbols as in Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform. The Ugaritic alphabet condensed this into a set of just 30 signs, each representing a consonant. This was a revolutionary democratization of writing. Suddenly, it was not only priests and royal scribes who could record information. Merchants could keep their own accounts, and stories could be written down with newfound ease. Experts like Dr. Marguerite Yon have shown how these tablets open a direct window into Canaanite religion. The epic poems known as the Baal cycle depict the storm god's battles for supremacy, stories of creation, death, and resurrection that reverberate with themes found in later biblical texts. We can hear the echoes of Ugarit's pantheon in the names and narratives that would eventually be woven into the fabric of neighboring cultures. Yet, for all its intellectual brilliance, Ugarit was terrifyingly fragile. Around the year 1190 before the Common Era, the city was utterly destroyed. The evidence points to a sudden, catastrophic attack, most likely by the mysterious coalition known as the Sea Peoples. The archives themselves provide clues to this wider collapse, with tablets mentioning food shortages and desperate letters to allies that went unanswered. Ugarit's story is a stark microcosm, a city at the peak of its cultural achievement snuffed out in a single violent episode. Its revolutionary alphabet, however, did not die with it. The simplicity and efficiency of the Ugaritic system appear to have influenced the development of the Phoenician alphabet, which itself became the ancestor of the Greek and Latin scripts we use today. So the next time you write a simple note, remember that the power to do so easily may have its roots in a bustling port city whose rediscovery began with a farmer's plow. Decades later, another chance discovery would rewrite the earliest chapters of Semitic history. In the 1970s, an Italian archaeological team led by Paolo Matti was excavating a large mound in northern Syria. They uncovered the remains of a magnificent royal palace, but its true treasure was hidden in a small, burned room. There, they found over 20,000 cuneiform tablets, an entire state archive that had been baked hard and preserved by the very fire that destroyed the city. This was Ebla, a kingdom that thrived more than 4,000 years ago in the 3rd millennium before the Common Era. The sheer volume of these clay documents was staggering. They revealed Ebla not as a minor settlement, but as the capital of a vast commercial empire, a hub for the trade of textiles, timber, and precious metals that connected Mesopotamia to the Mediterranean. Its sophisticated bureaucracy managed a complex economy with a precision no one had imagined for the period. The language of these tablets sent the biggest shockwave through the academic world. While written in cuneiform script, the underlying language was a previously unknown early Semitic dialect, now called Eblate. This discovery pushed back the historical clock on complex Semitic societies, proving they were forming powerful, literate states much earlier than previously believed. How did archaeologists manage to recover such fragile evidence? The fire that consumed the palace around 2350 before the Common Era essentially fired the clay tablets, turning them into durable ceramics. Teams used painstaking manual techniques, often brushing away debris with soft tools and immediately stabilizing the fragile pieces. The translation process was a monumental puzzle, piecing together economic receipts, royal decrees, and even school texts used to train scribes. These documents include detailed king lists, records of diplomatic marriages that forged alliances with distant powers, and treaties with rival cities like Mari, revealing a web of international relations that stretched across the ancient world. Ebla's own pantheon of gods and goddesses is detailed in ritual texts, and its legal codes show a structured society with laws governing everything from property rights to family matters, providing a clear precursor to the famous laws of Hammurabi that would come centuries later. Yet, for all its sophistication, Ebla met a violent end. The tablets themselves point to the rising power of the Akkadian Empire to the south. It is widely believed that the great Akkadian king Sargon, or his grandson Naram-Sin, razed the city to the ground, shattering its power forever. What does the story of Ebla teach us about the resilience of cultural knowledge? Its entire existence was erased for millennia, its memory surviving only as a faint echo in a few later texts. Its recovery proves that a single archive can resurrect a civilization from complete oblivion, forcing us to constantly reconsider the map of the ancient world and the forgotten empires that shaped it. The story of urban life begins not with gold or grand palaces, but with a wall. At the ancient mound of Tel-es-Sultan, the layers of history run impossibly deep, tracing a continuous thread of human habitation back to around 10,000 years before the Common Era. This is Jericho, and it holds the profound title of the world's oldest fortified city. Its earliest defenses are a marvel of Neolithic engineering, a massive stone wall, and a mysterious circular tower that soared nearly 9 meters high. Why would a community of farmers just beginning to settle down undertake such a colossal project? This was not yet the age of kings and armies. The walls of Jericho were likely a communal effort, a shared response to a world still filled with dangers, both human and natural. They represent a fundamental shift in the human psyche, a collective decision to draw a line in the sand and say, "This place is ours and we will protect it." The pioneering archaeologist Kathleen Kenyon unlocked much of this story through meticulous stratigraphy, carefully peeling back the layers of the tell to reveal a city that was destroyed and rebuilt over and over, a phoenix rising from its own ashes time and again. Beyond its famous walls, Jericho was a laboratory for the Neolithic Revolution. Here, we find the earliest evidence of domesticated grains like emmer wheat and barley, and the remnants of sophisticated irrigation systems that channeled water from the local spring to nourish fields. This mastery of agriculture allowed people to stay in one place, to build not just houses but a society. Their spiritual life was just as complex. In one of archaeology's most haunting discoveries, they practiced a skull cult, carefully removing the heads of their deceased ancestors, modeling their faces with plaster, and inlaying shells for eyes, perhaps to keep their memory and wisdom alive within the community. The city's longevity made it a crucial hub in regional trade, dealing in precious commodities like salt from the Dead Sea and bitumen for waterproofing. But its fame in the popular imagination comes from the biblical account of its walls tumbling down. While archaeologists debate the historicity of that specific event, the evidence shows Jericho was indeed violently destroyed around the 15th century before the Common Era. A mass burial discovered at the site points to a sudden, catastrophic event, whether a devastating earthquake or a brutal invasion that wiped out a generation. So how does Jericho's staggering longevity reflect our own deepest drives? It shows that the desire for security, for community, and for a place to call home is one of the oldest and most powerful forces in human history. This city reminds us that our urban world has roots reaching back into the very dawn of civilization. The sheer scale of the royal palace at Mari was enough to humble any visiting ambassador. Stretching over 6 acres along the Euphrates River, this wasn't just a king's residence. It was the administrative heart of an 18th century before the Common Era empire, a machine of state powered by clay and ink. French archaeologists uncovering it in the 1930s found more than grand courtyards and throne rooms. They found the machine's memory, a royal archive containing over 25,000 clay tablets. These documents, meticulously filed by a highly organized bureaucracy, offer an almost day-by-day account of the reign of its last great king, Zimri-Lim. The palace walls themselves were a canvas of power and piety, adorned with vibrant frescoes. One famous scene shows the king receiving the symbols of rule from the goddess Ishtar, a public declaration of divine endorsement. Another captures the quiet dignity of a sacrificial procession, bringing the rhythm of daily ritual to life in stunning color. This artistic splendor was funded by a crucial economic advantage. Mari sat astride the vital tin trade route. Tin, when alloyed with copper, creates bronze, the essential metal for weapons, tools, and the very infrastructure of contemporary civilizations. Controlling this flow gave Mari immense influence and wealth, positioning it as an essential mediator between the mighty empires of Mesopotamia and the smaller city-states of the Levant. The true treasure, however, was in the written word. The tablets reveal a world of sophisticated diplomacy that feels strikingly modern. Kings addressed each other as brothers, exchanged lavish gifts to secure alliances, and maintained networks of informants. One urgent message to Zimri-Lim from a trusted source reads almost like an ancient intelligence briefing. warning him of a rival king's troop movements and treacherous intentions. This intricate web of alliances and espionage was managed by a complex bureaucracy. Scribes used personalized cylinder seals, rolling their unique designs into the soft clay of documents to authenticate everything from tax records to international treaties. The administrative system was so thorough that we even hear powerful voices from behind the throne. Queen Shibtu, Zimri Lim's wife, was a formidable political player in her own right. Her letters show her managing affairs of state in the king's absence, overseeing everything from religious ceremonies to the distribution of grain, offering a rare and detailed insight into the influential roles women could hold. Yet all this power and organization could not ultimately save Mary. Its vast wealth and strategic location made it a prize, and its carefully maintained alliance with Babylon proved its undoing. The ambitious King Hammurabi, after years of calling Zimri Lim his brother, turned on him. Around 1760 before the Common Era, Babylonian forces sacked the city, burning the palace and deliberately toppling the statues of its gods. The very fire that destroyed the palace, however, baked the clay tablets hard, preserving this unparalleled archive for millennia. How do Mary's detailed diplomatic records mirror our own international relations? They reveal that the core mechanics of power, the alliances of convenience, the delicate balance of trade, and the ever-present shadow of betrayal are as ancient as civilization itself. Mary's story is a timeless lesson in the precarious nature of influence, a reminder that even the most carefully constructed power can be shattered in an instant. The harbor of Byblos was a forest of scents and sounds, the air thick with the smell of cedar resin and salt. For centuries, the great wooden ships of this Phoenician port carried a cargo more valuable than any jewel, the logs of the mighty cedars of Lebanon, destined for the construction projects of Egyptian pharaohs. This intimate trade relationship with Egypt was so fundamental that the city's name became permanently linked with the written word. The Greeks called papyrus scrolls byblos after the city that supplied them, a term that would eventually give us the word Bible. Byblos was far more than a trading post. It was a crucible where the very tools of modern communication were forged. The pioneering excavations of Morris Dunn and uncovered a city with layers of history reaching back to the Neolithic era, but its golden age came as a powerful Phoenician city-state in the second millennium before the Common Era. Its temples and royal tombs reveal a society deeply engaged with the wider world, a place where Egyptian scarabs and local Canaanite deities existed side by side. The true revolution, however, was etched in stone. Inscriptions found on royal sarcophagi and votive obelisks show a clear evolution. Earlier scripts, borrowing from Egyptian hieroglyphic and cuneiform systems, gradually gave way to something simpler and far more powerful, a 22-letter consonantal alphabet. This was the Phoenician alphabet, a system so efficient it could be learned in days rather than years. The most famous of these early texts is the inscription on the sarcophagus of King Ahram. It carries a stark warning to any potential grave robbers, a curse written in a script that would one day circle the globe. This was not the creation of a writing system from nothing, but its brilliant simplification. By stripping writing down to its core consonants, the Phoenicians created a tool perfectly suited for merchants needing to keep fast records and for sailors to document their voyages. This practical invention would become their most enduring export, as Phoenician traders established colonies across the Mediterranean. From Carthage in North Africa to ports in Spain and Sicily, they carried their alphabet with them. It was in places like these that the Greeks encountered the script. They recognized its utility but made a crucial adaptation, repurposing some of the consonant signs to represent vowel sounds. This Greek alphabet, a direct descendant of the one honed in Byblos, would in turn become the ancestor of the Latin script used by much of the world today. Beyond commerce and writing, Byblos held a deep spiritual significance as a central cult site for the worship of Adonis, the god of beauty and desire. The myth of his tragic death and his lover's grief was ritually reenacted each year, with the nearby river Adonis said to run red with his blood, a natural phenomenon caused by mountain soil washed downstream. This religious fervor, combined with its economic might, gave Byblos a resilience that allowed it to endure through successive waves of foreign domination by Assyrians, Babylonians, and Persians. Its story is a powerful reminder that an idea can be more durable than any empire. The cedars it sold were used to build palaces and temples that have long since crumbled to dust, but the writing system it helped perfect endures in the very words you are hearing now. How many other fundamental aspects of our modern world began in such unassuming places, not with a royal decree, but with the practical need of a merchant to mark a transaction or a sailor to chart a course? The ruins of Hazor sprawl across 200 acres, a testament to its former status as the giant of the Canaanite world. This was no mere town, but a sprawling metropolis of the Bronze Age, its influence stretching from the hills of Galilee to the shores of the Mediterranean. Its strategic location along the Via Maris, the great coastal highway, made it a hub of commerce and a prize for any aspiring empire. Excavations led by figures like Ugarit revealed a city of immense sophistication, protected by colossal earthen ramparts and a fortified gate complex so advanced it became a template for military architecture across the region. Beneath the ground, engineers carved out a monumental shaft and tunnel system to reach the water table, ensuring the city could withstand a long siege. The artifacts pulled from its soil, from Cypriot pottery to Egyptian scarabs, speak of a city fully integrated into the international trade networks of its day. Yet the true character of Hazor is revealed in its temples and palaces. Here, the cultural synthesis of the Levant was on full display. Canaanite deities like the storm god Baal were worshipped, their rituals echoing those found at Ugarit, while artistic motifs and administrative practices showed a clear debt to Mesopotamian culture. A stunning basalt orthostat carved with a powerful lion, discovered in a palatial context, was not just decoration. It was a universal symbol of royal authority, a statement of power that would have been understood from Egypt to Babylon. The city's scribes were equally cosmopolitan, using the cuneiform script to manage a complex economy, their tablets detailing everything from grain shipments to diplomatic correspondence. This vibrant world met a sudden, fiery end around the 13th century before the Common Era. The archaeological layer is a stark horizon of blackened debris, collapsed mud brick, and shattered pottery. This cataclysm is so pronounced that it has fueled a long-standing debate. Does this destruction correspond to the biblical account of the Israelite conquest, where the book of Joshua describes Hazor as the head of all those kingdoms, a city that was burned with fire? Some archaeologists see a compelling parallel, while others point to wider regional collapse, possibly involving the mysterious Sea Peoples or internal revolt. What is undeniable is the violence of that final hour. The city's palaces were systematically destroyed, and statues of its gods were deliberately defaced and broken, a common practice meant to symbolically annihilate a defeated power's divine protection. After this devastation, the story of Hazor was not over. A much smaller, simpler settlement eventually grew atop the ruins, identified by archaeologists as an Israelite village. This new community built their simple homes directly over the remains of the shattered Canaanite palaces, a physical manifestation of a new chapter written upon the ashes of the old. How does Hazor's layered history reflect the clash and fusion of cultures in the ancient Levant? It stands as a powerful microcosm, a single city where the grand narratives of international trade, religious belief, imperial ambition, and violent transition are all preserved in its stratified earth, reminding us that history is rarely a simple story of one civilization replacing another, but a complex and often brutal process of transformation. The ground at Megiddo holds the compressed weight of 20 distinct cities, each one built upon the ruins of the last. This was not just a settlement, but a choke point controlling the most vital pass on the Via Maris, the military and commercial superhighway of the ancient world. Its strategic value was so immense that it became immortalized as the prophesied battlefield of Armageddon, a name derived from Har Megiddo or Mount Megiddo. For millennia, this mound was fought over, destroyed, and rebuilt, its very soil a chronicle of conflict and innovation. Excavations reveal a staggering timeline, from early Canaanite temples to the administrative centers of Egyptian overlords and the fortified cities of the Israelite kingdom. The city's wealth and power are evident in discoveries like a hoard of exquisite gold jewelry and artifacts, believed to have been hidden during the turbulent campaigns of Pharaoh Thutmose III, who famously recorded his victory here on the walls of the Karnak temple in Egypt. But Megiddo's true genius lay in its engineering. To survive sieges, its inhabitants performed a breathtaking feat, carving a 70-meter-long tunnel deep through solid rock to reach a hidden spring outside the city walls. This subterranean passage, wide enough for people to walk through, guaranteed a secret water supply even when enemies encircled the city above. The city's infrastructure was equally impressive, with massive stone grain silos for storing food and complexes of long, pillared buildings identified by early excavators as stables for the chariot horses that were the backbone of its military might. This interpretation of Solomon's stables, however, is part of an ongoing scholarly debate. The monumental six-chambered gate, once attributed to King Solomon's building program, is now questioned by archaeologists like Israel Finkelstein, who use advanced radiocarbon dating to suggest it may date to a later period. This debate is far from academic minutiae. It cuts to the heart of how we understand the rise of the first Israelite state, forcing a re-evaluation of the biblical narrative against hard archaeological evidence. Megiddo's story is one of relentless cycles. It flourished under the Canaanites, was conquered and taxed by the Egyptians, integrated into the Israelite monarchy, and finally crushed by the Assyrian Empire in the 8th century before the Common Era, after which it never regained its former glory. Its population adapted to each new ruler, each destruction, each shift in the balance of power. What does this relentless cycle of ruin and rebirth tell us about the nature of human resilience? Megiddo teaches us that survival is not just about strong walls, but about the enduring will to innovate, to dig deeper, and to build again, no matter how many times the world above collapses. The desert sun ignites the rose-red sandstone cliffs of Petra in a blaze of color, a spectacle designed to overwhelm any traveler emerging from the dark, winding sick. This was not a city built, but a city carved, its magnificent tombs and temples hewn directly from the living rock by the Nabateans, a nomadic people who transformed themselves into masters of the desert. From the 4th century before the Common Era to the 1st century of the Common Era, Petra was the dazzling capital of a commercial empire that controlled the flow of frankincense and myrrh, the priceless incenses of the ancient world. Its very location was a statement of power, a secret fortress guarding the trade routes that connected Arabia to the Mediterranean. The journey to its heart was part of its mystique. The Siq is a natural gorge, a narrow, high-walled canyon that twists for over a kilometer, creating a dramatic processional way that builds anticipation with every step until it finally frames the iconic facade of the treasury, glowing in the filtered light. This was not just a tomb, but a monumental advertisement of Nabatean wealth and sophistication. Its Hellenistic-style columns and statues a deliberate embrace of international artistic language to impress a global clientele. But Petra's true genius was not in its carved facades, but in its hidden veins. In a region receiving less than 15 centimeters of rain a year, the Nabateans engineered a hydraulic marvel. They constructed a complex network of dams, cisterns, and terracotta pipes that channeled every drop of floodwater from the surrounding mountains, storing it in vast reservoirs and distributing it throughout the city. Archaeologist Dr. Lee Ann Bedowell's work has revealed how this system supported not only a population of thousands, but also lush gardens and public fountains, creating an oasis of shocking luxury in the heart of the desert. This mastery of water allowed them to move beyond their nomadic roots and forge a permanent, opulent capital. Their wealth was drawn from the incense trade, taxing the caravans of camels that carried aromatic resins from southern Arabia. This position as middlemen made them incredibly rich and profoundly cosmopolitan. Inscriptions found throughout the city are written in Nabatean Aramaic, Greek, and even Latin, reflecting a society comfortable with multiple identities. Their art seamlessly blends Eastern and Western motifs, with statues of their primary god, Dashara, standing alongside figures from the Greek pantheon. The city's rediscovery for the Western world was a moment of high adventure. In 1812, the Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt, disguised as an Arab scholar and speaking fluent Arabic, convinced a local guide to take him to the legendary lost city, having heard whispers of its existence. His brief, furtive visit unveiled Petra to a fascinated Europe. Beyond the famous treasury, the city sprawls across a vast basin, containing a massive theater carved to seat thousands, royal tombs, and the towering monastery, perched high on a mountain peak after a grueling climb of over 800 steps. Ongoing excavations continue to shift our understanding away from a city of just tombs and monuments. They are uncovering extensive residential districts, marketplaces, and cultic sites, revealing the vibrant daily life of its citizens. Modern technology is now peeling back the sands without a single shovel. Satellite imagery and drone surveys are identifying the ghostly outlines of unexcavated structures, hinting that much of Petra's story still lies buried. So how did this integration of nature and architecture inspire sustainable design? The Nabateans did not fight their environment. They listened to it, harnessing its destructive floods for life and sculpting their homes from its cliffs. Their city stands as a timeless lesson in resilience, proving that human ingenuity can create splendor not in spite of a harsh landscape, but in profound harmony with it. The story of an oasis is one of life wrested from barrenness, and no city embodied this more profoundly than Palmyra. Rising from the Syrian desert, its grand colonnades and temples were not just architecture, they were a declaration. For centuries, this caravan city served as the vital nexus between the Roman Empire and Parthian Persia, a place where cultures did not merely meet, they merged. Its golden age unfolded between the 1st and 3rd centuries of the Common Era, transforming it into a wealthy metropolis whose art and architecture became a breathtaking fusion of Roman scale, Greek aesthetics, and Persian motifs. This was a society built by merchants and administered by priests, a fact preserved in thousands of inscriptions found throughout the ruins, written in both Aramaic, the language of the local population, and Greek, the lingua franca of commerce and diplomacy. At the heart of this spiritual and civic life stood the magnificent temple of Bel, dedicated to the supreme god of the Pomeran pantheon. This sanctuary was a vast complex where processions would have moved through courtyards and into a central shrine, its very design reflecting a blend of Eastern and Western religious traditions. Beyond the city center, the desert horizon was punctuated by the unique tower tombs of the Palmyran necropolises. These multi-story family mausoleums, some soaring several stories high, housed elaborate sarcophagi carved with lifelike portraits of the deceased, a poignant effort to preserve individual memory for eternity. The city's immense wealth flowed directly from its geographic position. Palmyran authorities levied tariffs on the endless caravans carrying silk, spices, and incense along the Silk Road, using this revenue to fund its monumental building projects. This independent spirit reached its zenith under the rule of Queen Zenobia in the 3rd century. In a bold challenge to Roman authority, she expanded her territory, briefly creating an empire that stretched from Egypt to Anatolia. Her ambition, however, provoked the full wrath of Rome. The Emperor Aurelian crushed her forces, reconquered the city, and led Zenobia herself back to Rome in golden chains. While Palmyra continued as a Roman garrison, its days as an independent power were over. For centuries, its ruins stood as a majestic monument to this forgotten chapter of history, a symbol of multicultural harmony preserved in stone. Then, in our own time, this symbol was violently attacked. Extremist groups seeking to erase a past they deemed idolatrous systematically destroyed the Temple of Bel, the Arch of Triumph, and numerous tower tombs. This assault on cultural heritage was personified in the tragic fate of Khald al-Assad, the city's longtime head of antiquities. When militants demanded he reveal the location of hidden treasures, the 83-year-old archaeologist refused, choosing to protect the artifacts he had devoted his life to understanding. He was executed for his defiance, a martyr for the memory of the city he loved. In the aftermath, international organizations have mobilized, using sophisticated digital technology and thousands of archived photographs to create detailed 3D models for virtual reconstruction and to guide physical restoration efforts. The story of Palmyra is not just one of ancient rise and fall, but a stark, modern lesson. What does its fate teach us about the importance of safeguarding cultural memory? It reveals that the stones of the past are not inert. They are a testament to human creativity and coexistence, and their destruction is an attack on the very foundations of our shared history. A single crack of pottery echoed through a desert cave, a sound that would shatter centuries of silence. In 1947, a young Bedouin shepherd searching for a lost goat threw a stone into a hidden opening and heard that fateful noise. He had just stumbled upon the greatest manuscript discovery of the 20th century, the Dead Sea Scrolls. The jars he found contained ancient leather and papyrus scrolls, preserved for 2,000 years by the arid, stable climate of the cliffs near the Dead Sea. This was not a random cache, but a vast library, deliberately hidden by the community that lived at the nearby settlement of Qumran. Most scholars identify this group as the Essenes, a Jewish sect that broke from the religious establishment in Jerusalem during the 2nd century before the Common Era. They established this remote outpost as a place of radical devotion, fleeing what they saw as a corrupt world to prepare for an imminent apocalyptic war between the forces of light and darkness. The ruins of Qumran, meticulously studied by archaeologists like Dr. Jody Magnus, reveal the contours of their austere life. A long, low table and inkwells found in one room are identified as a scriptorium where scribes meticulously copied sacred texts. The site is dotted with numerous ritual baths or mikvayot, underscoring their obsession with spiritual purity. Communal dining halls and a vast pantry for storing food suggest they shared their possessions and meals, living as a celibate, dedicated brotherhood awaiting the end of days. The scrolls themselves are a literary time capsule. They include every book of the Hebrew Bible except Esther, with the great Isaiah scroll being 1,000 years older than any previously known biblical manuscript, demonstrating the remarkable accuracy of the textual tradition. Alongside these were previously unknown sectarian works like the Community Rule, which laid out the strict laws and initiation rites for the group, and the War Scroll, which detailed their expected final battle. Then there are the mysteries such as the Copper Scroll. Unlike the others, this text was engraved on metal, and it does not contain religious wisdom. Instead, it lists dozens of locations where immense treasures of gold and silver were supposedly hidden, a cryptic puzzle that has tantalized treasure hunters for decades. The authentication of these fragile documents was a monumental task. Scholars used carbon-14 dating on the linen wrappings and the scrolls themselves, confirming their origin from the 3rd century before the Common Era to the 1st century of the Common Era. The texts vividly reflect the political and religious ferment of their time, a period of Hellenistic influence and brutal Roman occupation. They speak of a wicked priest persecuting a teacher of righteousness, figures lost to history but central to the sect's identity. The significance of these finds for biblical scholarship cannot be overstated. They provide a direct window into the diverse landscape of Second Temple Judaism, revealing a world of multiple interpretations and messianic expectations that form the very backdrop for the origins of Christianity. So how do these ancient scrolls challenge our understanding of religious history? They prove that the biblical canon was still fluid in this period, and that the ideas that shaped Western religion emerged from a rich, complex, and often contentious dialogue, much of which was conducted not in great temples, but in isolated desert communities like Qumran, where faith was honed in the stark silence of the wilderness. The tell of Beth Shean rises from the landscape like a layered cake of civilizations, each stratum a different flavor of empire. For over 6,000 years, this was not just a city, but a revolving door of cultures, a place where Egyptian governors, Canaanite priests, Philistine warriors, and Roman merchants each left their indelible mark. Its strategic position guarding the crossroads of the Jordan Valley and the Jezreel Plain made it a prize everyone wanted to control. The city's story is written in its dirt, a chronicle uncovered by archaeologists like Dr. Amihai Mazar, whose work revealed a dramatic cycle of destruction and rebirth. One of the most vivid chapters dates to around 1000 before the Common Era, when the Philistines violently destroyed the Canaanite city. This event resonates with the biblical account of King Saul, whose body was displayed on the walls of Beth Shean as a grim trophy of war. The archaeological evidence confirms a fiery end, followed by a new, more modest Israelite settlement built directly atop the ruins. But the city's cosmopolitan spirit was never truly buried. In the ruins of a Canaanite temple, excavators found stunning cultic stands, intricately decorated with sphinxes and serpents, mythical creatures that speak to a rich spiritual world. Even more striking were the basalt statues of Egyptian officials, powerful figures carved in a foreign style, proving that for centuries this was a key stronghold of the pharaohs, a piece of Egypt grafted onto Canaanite soil. This pattern of cultural layering continued for millennia. Under Greek and then Roman rule, Beth Shean, then known as Scythopolis, became a leading city of the Decapolis, a league of 10 Hellenized cities. Its residents enjoyed all the amenities of classical urban life, including a magnificent Roman theater that could seat thousands, its stone seats still facing the stage today. The city's Byzantine streets, paved with colonnades and lined with shops, reveal a thriving late antique metropolis. Yet this long history was punctuated by sudden catastrophe. In the year 749 of the Common Era, a massive earthquake shattered the city. The archaeological record shows collapsed columns and walls that fell in a single, violent direction, evidence of a seismic event so powerful it forced the city's final abandonment. The mundane artifacts left behind tell their own story. Loom weights from a weaver's workshop and hordes of coins from a merchant's table offer intimate glimpses of daily life abruptly interrupted. How does Beth Shean's multicultural layers reflect the Levant's history of conquest and coexistence? It stands as a perfect microcosm, a single mound where you can trace the rise and fall of empires not as a simple replacement, but as a complex process of adaptation where each new power absorbed, repurposed, and built upon the legacy of the one before it. The scent of crushed sea snails and boiling vats once defined Sidon's coastline, a pungent signature of its immense wealth. This was the source of Tyrian purple, a dye so rare and vibrant it became the exclusive color of royalty across the ancient world. Sidon was not just a Phoenician port, it was a maritime superpower, a city of shipbuilders and glassmakers whose influence stretched from the Levant to the very edges of the known Mediterranean. Its story is one of commercial genius and delicate political balance, a kingdom that managed to thrive for centuries by skillfully navigating the treacherous waters between the colossal empires of Egypt and Assyria. The city's kings were masters of realpolitik, offering tribute and allegiance to whichever superpower was dominant at the moment, all while preserving their own commercial autonomy and growing fantastically rich. This long history is physically etched into the land, with modern Sidon literally built atop its ancient predecessor, creating a monumental challenge for archaeologists who must dig deep beneath bustling streets to uncover its past. The most breathtaking discoveries have come from its royal necropolises. Here, tombs cut into the rock have yielded sarcophagi of stunning artistry, none more famous than the so-called Alexander sarcophagus. Despite its name, it was likely built for a Sidonian king, and its carved reliefs show a masterful blend of Greek and Phoenician styles, depicting vivid battle and hunt scenes that reveal a culture completely at home in a hybrid artistic world. Another crucial find was the sarcophagus of King Eshmanazar II. The black basalt coffin is inscribed with a lengthy Phoenician text, a curse warning any potential grave robbers against desecrating the tomb, a plea for eternal rest that also provides historians with a precious record of the city's royal lineage and its dedication to the gods. Sidon's economic engine was its unparalleled seafaring ability. Its ships, built from the famed cedars of Lebanon, were the finest of their age, capable of long, daring voyages. There is compelling circumstantial evidence that Sidonian sailors, in their quest for valuable tin, may have ventured as far as the British Isles, establishing trade links that connected the mines of Cornwall to the workshops of the Levant. This was not mere exploration, it was the creation of a truly globalized network for its time. At home, the city was a hub of innovation. Its artisans perfected the technique of glassblowing, transforming sand into valuable trade goods, while its scribes played a crucial role in refining and disseminating the phonetic alphabet, the very tool that made such far-flung commerce possible. The city's spiritual life centered on the Temple of Eshmun, its god of healing, a sprawling complex that attracted pilgrims and showcased the city's architectural ambition. Yet Sidon's history was also defined by its fierce rivalry with its sister city, Tyre. This was a competition for trade dominance, colonial territory, and cultural prestige, a Phoenician civil Cold War that drove both cities to greater heights. Despite conquests by the Persians and later Alexander the Great, Sidon demonstrated a remarkable resilience, repeatedly absorbing foreign influences and repurposing them for its own continued prosperity. What can Sidon's economic and cultural achievements teach us about the roots of globalization? Its story demonstrates that the drive to connect, to trade, and to adapt is not a modern invention, but a fundamental human impulse that, thousands of years ago, built networks of exchange spanning continents, proving that even the smallest coastal hub can cast a very long shadow across the waves of history. The legendary purple dye of Tyre was worth more than its weight in gold, a color born from the sea itself. This was not a city on the coast, but a city of the sea, an island fortress so formidable it seemed untouchable for centuries. Its wealth was extracted from the murex snail, a creature whose secretions, after a complex and foul-smelling process, produced a vibrant, color-fast purple. So many shells were processed that ancient mounds of their crushed remains still dot the coastline today. This monopoly on royal purple funded a maritime empire that stretched across the Mediterranean. Tyrian ships, the most advanced of their age, did more than just trade. They founded colonies, with Carthage in North Africa becoming a power in its own right, a daughter city that would one day challenge Rome. The city's influence was so profound that its myths became embedded in Greek culture. The story of the Princess Europa, abducted by Zeus from the shores of Tyre, and her brother Cadmus, who set out to find her and was said to have introduced the alphabet to Greece, illustrates the deep cultural connections woven by Tyrian traders. Even the biblical narrative records its importance, describing how King Hiram of Tyre supplied the cedar wood, craftsmen, and gold for the construction of King Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. Yet this island confidence also bred a pride that drew the ire of prophets. The book of Ezekiel contains a lament for the king of Tyre, a poignant prophecy that foreshadowed a fall from grace. That fall came in 332 before the Common Era, in the form of Alexander the Great. Unable to storm the island walls, the Macedonian king displayed terrifying ambition, ordering his army to build a massive causeway from the mainland by throwing every stone, piece of rubble, and even the dust of the old mainland city into the sea. The siege was brutal, but the engineering worked. Alexander breached the walls and shattered Tyre's invincibility. Archaeologists like Dr. Patricia Bickey have peeled back these dramatic layers, uncovering the remains of its two famous harbors and the luxurious residential quarters of its wealthy merchants. They have found evidence of early coinage minted in the city and artifacts that attest to a society both innovative and deeply connected. The city lived on under Hellenistic and then Roman rule, its landscape transforming with new monuments. Excavations have revealed a vast Roman hippodrome where the thunder of chariot races would have echoed, a testament to the city's enduring importance as a center of entertainment and civic life. But its greatest strength ultimately became its weakness. Alexander's causeway and the gradual silting of the harbors over centuries permanently connected Tyre to the mainland, robbing it of the defensive isolation that had defined its power for so long. How did Tyre's isolation and connectivity shape its historical trajectory? It was a paradox. The very sea that made it rich and untouchable also connected it to a wider world whose ambitions would eventually bridge the waters and conquer its island heart. The siege ramp at Lachish is still there, a great earthen scar clawed into the landscape. This was no mere fortress. It was the second most important city in the Kingdom of Judah, a bastion guarding the approaches to Jerusalem itself. In 701 before the Common Era, it became the target of the full, terrifying might of the Assyrian war machine, led by King Sennacherib. He was so proud of this victory that he immortalized it not in Judah, but in his own distant palace at Nineveh, covering its walls with detailed stone reliefs that depict the entire brutal campaign. We can see the Assyrian archers advancing under the cover of shields, the siege engines scaling the ramps, and the Judahite defenders hurling stones and torches in a desperate attempt to hold their walls. The reliefs do not shy away from the grim aftermath, showing prisoners being executed and families being led into exile, a stark visual record of imperial propaganda designed to terrorize and subdue. The archaeological record at Lachish, meticulously excavated by experts like Dr. David Ussishkin, confirms every chilling detail. The siege ramp itself, a monumental engineering feat built from tons of stone and earth, still rises against the city's corner. Scattered across the slope and at the base of the walls, excavators found a carpet of iron arrowheads and hundreds of sling stones, silent witnesses to the storm of projectiles that overwhelmed the defenders. Inside the city, the story continues through the humble medium of broken pottery. A collection of Ostraka pottery shards with ink inscriptions was discovered in a guardroom near the city gate. Known as the Lachish letters, these are not royal proclamations but urgent military correspondence. One letter contains a haunting line, warning that the signals from a nearby city could no longer be seen, suggesting it had already fallen. Another mentions a prophet whose words were causing concern, a figure some scholars believe could be a reference to Jeremiah. These fragments reveal a literate military command structure and a city gripped by fear and uncertainty in its final days. Lachish was more than a battlefield, it was a vital administrative hub. Excavations uncovered vast storerooms that once held grain, oil, and wine, collected as taxes to fuel the Judahite kingdom. Its sophisticated water system, a deep shaft tunneling down to the groundwater, was a marvel of engineering designed to withstand prolonged sieges. Yet, despite all these preparations, the city fell. The biblical account in the Book of Kings corroborates the siege, describing how Sennacherib captured all the fortified cities of Judah, laying the groundwork for his infamous and ultimately failed attempt on Jerusalem. The city was rebuilt, only to be destroyed again by the Babylonians a century later, after which it was largely abandoned. Its role as a guardian of the highlands forever ended. What does Lachish's resilience and downfall reveal about the nature of ancient warfare and memory? It stands as a powerful testament to the brutal efficiency of Assyrian psychological warfare, where the terror of conquest was broadcast through art across an empire. It also shows the incredible determination of a smaller kingdom to resist, building and rebuilding against impossible odds. Lachish teaches us that memory is often written by the victors in stone, but it is also preserved by the vanquished in the broken pottery and scattered arrowheads left behind, a dual legacy of imperial power and human resistance etched permanently into the earth. A fierce storm lashed the Tell of Gezer in the late 19th century, washing away centuries of soil to reveal the entrance to a deep, rock-cut water tunnel. This chance act of nature unveiled an engineering marvel that had quenched the thirst of this Canaanite city-state for generations. Gezer's location was no accident. It commanded a vital crossroads on the coastal highway between Egypt and Mesopotamia, a prize so valuable that the Egyptian pharaoh Merneptah boasted of capturing it on his famous victory stele. The city's early power is still visible today in its cyclopean walls, massive boulders fitted together without mortar, a formidable barrier that declared its strength to all who approached. Within these walls stood a row of 10 massive standing stones, known as Massaboth. These eerie, upright monoliths likely formed a Canaanite high place for outdoor worship, a silent testament to the spiritual rituals that once animated the city. The most famous and debated structure at Gezer is its monumental six-chambered gate. When archaeologists first uncovered it, its design was strikingly similar to the gates found at Hazor and Megiddo. This similarity sparked a century-long debate. The Bible credits King Solomon with fortifying these three cities, and for a time this gate was hailed as direct proof of the united Israelite monarchy. Today, scholars like Dr. Stephen Ortiz continue the excavation, carefully sifting through the evidence. The dating of this gate complex is now a central question, with some arguing it belongs to a later period, forcing a re-evaluation of that biblical narrative. Beyond grand architecture, a tiny limestone tablet found at Gezer provides an intimate glimpse into daily life. Known as the Gezer calendar, it is one of the oldest examples of Hebrew writing ever discovered. Its simple text, written by a schoolboy practicing his hand, describes the agricultural cycle throughout the year, from the months of planting to the months of harvest. This humble practice text speaks volumes about the society that produced it, a literate culture rooted in the rhythms of the land. The soil of Gezer tells a story of constant struggle. Archaeological layers reveal a city destroyed and rebuilt multiple times. There is clear evidence of a fiery conflagration, followed by a new, more modest settlement with distinct pottery, which some link to the rise of an Israelite presence. Another layer shows a vibrant Philistine community, marked by their characteristic Aegean-style pottery, proving this was a city of many masters. Ongoing excavations are now focusing not on palaces, but on the domestic quarters of the city's ordinary inhabitants. By uncovering their homes, their tools, and their trash, archaeologists hope to understand how life truly changed for the people living through these turbulent transitions of power. How do these accumulated layers of Canaanite, Philistine, and Israelite life challenge a simple reading of history? Gezer stands as a powerful reminder that the story written in stone and pottery is often far more complex and nuanced than the one preserved in texts, a place where every shard contributes to an ongoing conversation between myth and the hard, unyielding evidence of the earth. The springs of Dan bubble up from the earth with a constant, life-giving flow, feeding the headwaters of the Jordan River. This lush oasis in the far north of Israel was more than a city. It was a sacred frontier, a place where the spiritual and political identity of a nascent kingdom was forged and contested. Originally known as Lachish, this was a prosperous Canaanite settlement until, according to the biblical narrative, the tribe of Dan migrated north, conquered it, and gave it their name. The archaeological record, meticulously uncovered over decades by Dr. Avraham Buren, reveals this very transition. The layers of the tell show a clear shift, with older Canaanite structures giving way to new fortifications and a distinctive Israelite material culture. The city's spiritual heart was its high place, or Bama, an open-air sanctuary that served as a northern pilgrimage site for centuries. Here, pilgrims would have worshipped not in Jerusalem, but at this local altar, a practice that often put the northern kingdom at odds with the religious centralization efforts of the south. The artifacts from this sacred space tell a story of both devotion and syncretism. Intricate cultic stands, decorated with symbolic figures, were used in rituals, and the design of the altars themselves shows a fascinating blend of Canaanite and Israelite traditions, a visual representation of a faith still defining its boundaries. The city's defenses were as impressive as its sanctuary. Its massive mud-brick gate complex with a built-in stone bench provides a stunning archaeological echo of the biblical world. This bench is almost certainly the judge's seat, the very place where elders would have settled legal disputes and conducted civic business, just as described in stories like that of Ruth and Boaz. Yet the most explosive discovery at Dan was not a structure, but a broken piece of stone. Found in the 1990s, the Dan stele is a victory monument erected by an Aramean king, likely Hazael of Damascus. In its bragging text, the king boasts of defeating the king of Israel and the king of the house of David. That last phrase sent shockwaves through the academic world. Here was the first and only extra-biblical reference to King David's dynasty ever found, a direct corroboration of a royal line that many historians had questioned. This single inscription, born from the boasts of an enemy, provides a rare, tangible anchor for a foundational biblical figure. The city's sophisticated water system, channeling the powerful springs, ensured its survival through many conflicts, but it could not save Dan from the final, crushing wave of imperial expansion. In the 8th century before the Common Era, the Assyrian war machine arrived. The archaeological layer is one of utter destruction, with ash and collapsed buildings testifying to the city's violent incorporation into the Assyrian Empire, a fate that ended its role as an independent northern sanctuary. What does Dan's layered history reveal about the formation of Israelite identity? It shows a process that was neither simple nor pure, but a complex negotiation between older Canaanite traditions and new religious ideals, between local power and centralized authority, a story written in stone, water, and the boastful words of a rival king. The Philistine marketplace at Ashkelon was a symphony of foreign accents and unfamiliar goods. This was one of the 5 great cities of the Philistines, a seafaring people who arrived on the Levantine coast around the 12th century before the Common Era, bringing with them a culture deeply rooted in the Aegean world. Excavations led by the late Dr. Lawrence Stager uncovered a city that was a true melting pot, continuously inhabited from the Neolithic era and thriving under a succession of rulers. The most immediate sign of the Philistine presence is their distinct pottery. Unlike the local Canaanite styles, their ceramics were decorated with bold red and black geometric designs, their shapes echoing those found in Mycenaean Greece. Their dietary habits set them apart as well. Analysis of animal bones from Philistine layers shows a pronounced taste for pork and dog meat, a preference virtually unknown among their Canaanite and Israelite neighbors. This was more than a culinary quirk, it was a powerful cultural marker, a declaration of a different identity. The city's deep maritime connections fostered incredible innovation. Beneath the later ruins, archaeologists made a stunning find, the world's oldest known arched gate, a monumental structure built from mud brick in the Middle Bronze Age. The fact that this architectural marvel survived for millennia, standing long after the city around it had transformed, is a testament to the skill of its unknown engineers. Ashkelon's spiritual life was just as complex. A cache discovered from the earlier Canaanite period included a small, exquisite silver calf, a representation of the god El found within a shrine. This discovery provides a tangible link to the kind of religious practices that the biblical authors would later condemn. The Philistines introduced new agricultural staples, bringing crops like lentils and a new strain of wheat that diversified the local economy. Their marketplace was a hub of Mediterranean trade, with goods from Cyprus, Egypt, and the Aegean changing hands, fueling a prosperity evident in the remains of spacious villas and sophisticated wine and oil presses. This wealth and cultural confidence made them formidable rivals to the emerging Israelites. The biblical stories of Samson and Delilah are set in this very landscape, tales of conflict that reflect the very real tension along this coastal frontier. Yet, for all its resilience, Ashkelon faced total annihilation. In 604 before the Common Era, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II laid siege to the city. The archaeological evidence is horrific, a thick layer of ash and debris containing the skeletons of men, women, and children who perished in the conflagration. The city was wiped from the map, only to be reborn centuries later under the Romans, who revived its fortunes as a major exporter of wine and olive oil. How did Ashkelon's maritime connections foster such lasting cultural diversity and innovation? Its story shows that a port city is never an island, its identity constantly reshaped by the tides of trade, migration, and conflict, proving that the greatest survival skill is not resistance to change, but the ability to absorb and reinvent. Deep within the limestone hills of Galilee, an entire city of the dead lay hidden for centuries. Beit Shean was not a city for the living, but a sprawling necropolis that became the final resting place for generations of Jews, including some of the most revered sages of the rabbinic era. Its extensive catacombs, rediscovered in the 1930s by archaeologist Nauman Avigad, form a labyrinthine world of tombs carved directly into the soft rock. This was more than a cemetery. It was a powerful statement of resilience and identity in the wake of catastrophic loss. After the failure of the Bar Kokhba revolt against Rome and the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, the Jewish people faced a spiritual and political crisis. Beit Shean emerged as a new center of learning and authority, even serving for a time as the seat of the Sanhedrin, the supreme Jewish religious court. Its most famous resident was Rabbi Judah the Prince, the redactor of the Mishnah, the foundational text of Rabbinic Judaism. His burial here transformed the site into a major pilgrimage destination for Jews across the diaspora, from Syria to Yemen, who paid to have their bodies transported for interment in the holy soil of the land of Israel. The walls of these catacombs are a silent conversation between tradition and the wider world. Inscriptions are carved in Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew, reflecting the multilingual reality of the community. The artwork is a fascinating blend of sacred Jewish symbols and pagan mythological figures. A stone sarcophagus might be adorned with a finely carved seven-branched menorah, the definitive symbol of the temple, right beside a depiction of the Greek hero Hercules or the winged goddess Nike. This was not a sign of religious confusion, but rather a complex cultural negotiation. For a community living within the Roman Empire, using popular artistic motifs was a way to create beautiful, prestigious tombs while still asserting their core identity through their own symbols. The discovery of a sarcophagus belonging to a woman named Horbata, who hailed from the distant caravan city of Palmyra, underscores the site's far-reaching reputation. Her presence here speaks to the economic engine that the necropolis became, a bustling industry of stonecutters, priests, and administrators managing the complex logistics of eternal rest. The inscriptions also offer rare glimpses into the lives of women, recording their roles as mothers, wives, and sometimes as prominent patrons who funded the construction of family tombs. Experts like Dr. Benjamin Mazar have interpreted this rich tapestry as evidence of a confident community engaging with Hellenistic culture on its own terms. The site's decline began in the 4th century, likely due to a series of earthquakes and shifting political centers, and the catacombs were eventually sealed and forgotten. What does this fusion of menorahs and mythological creatures truly tell us about identity in a multicultural world? Beit Shean suggests that cultural boundaries were more porous than we might assume, and that a community can absorb external influences without losing the core of its own faith, creating a legacy etched in stone that is both uniquely Jewish and undeniably part of the ancient Mediterranean tapestry. The lifeblood of Afek was not its walls but its water. This formidable tell in Israel commanded the very source of the Yarkon River, a perennial spring that made it a strategic obsession for every empire that passed through the coastal plain. For millennia, Egyptians, Canaanites, and later Israelites all fought to control this hydrological heart, building and rebuilding a city whose survival was entirely dependent on its mastery of the precious resource. Archaeologists like Dr. Moshe Kochevi peeled back the layers to uncover a sprawling Middle Bronze Age palace. its foundations speaking of Canaanite kings who grew rich from taxing the trade caravans. Centuries later, the Romans built a luxurious villa atop the ruins, and Crusaders erected a stark fortress, each new power recognizing the same undeniable truth: whoever held effect controlled the water. The city's name appears in both Egyptian texts and the Hebrew Bible, where it is noted as the Philistine mustering point before their fateful battle with the Israelites at Ebenezer. This biblical connection is a subject of ongoing debate, with some scholars linking a clear destruction layer at the site to that very conflict, a possible echo of a legendary war preserved in both scripture and soil. The true engineering genius of Afek, however, lies underground. To protect their water source from enemies and drought, the city's inhabitants constructed a complex system of reinforced springs, reservoirs, and tunnels, channeling the flow into fortified areas where it could be accessed safely even during a prolonged siege. This was urban sustainability on a life-or-death scale. The artifacts found here, from Cypriot pottery to fragments of Egyptian jewelry, reveal a city deeply enmeshed in international trade networks, its economy fueled by its position on the road connecting Egypt to the north. One of the most tantalizing finds was a small fragment of a cuneiform tablet. Though just a piece, it hints at a world of international correspondence, a letter that likely traveled between Afek and a distant royal court, perhaps discussing alliances, trade, or impending threats. How did Afek's relentless focus on water management reflect a broader ancient innovation? It stands as a powerful microcosm, demonstrating that the greatest challenges of urban life, securing a reliable water supply, were the very catalysts for engineering brilliance, proving that control over nature's most basic resource has always been the ultimate foundation of power. The harbor at Dor was a crossroads of forgotten worlds, its waters lapping against quays built by the enigmatic sea peoples. These seafarers, who may have included ancestors of the Philistines, first established a powerful base here in the 12th century before the Common Era, a fortress from which they projected their influence along the coast. Yet they did not remain isolated conquerors for long. Over centuries, they gradually integrated with the local Canaanite inhabitants and the rising Phoenician traders, creating a unique cultural blend that defined the city for generations. Excavations led by scholars like Dr. Ephraim Stern have peeled back these layers, uncovering a Phoenician-style sanctuary standing not far from structures built in a distinctly Philistine plan. The artifacts pulled from the soil are a testament to far-reaching maritime networks, with Greek pottery resting beside Egyptian amulets and Cypriot storage jars, all speaking a language of commerce that spanned the Mediterranean. This was a city of many tongues, its story told in inscriptions carved in Phoenician, Greek, and Aramaic. Dor's strategic value ensured it was never left alone for long. It passed from Egyptian hegemony to probable Israelite control under King David, and later fell under the thumb of the Assyrian Empire, each transition leaving a distinct mark on its architecture and administration. Evidence of a violent destruction layer, followed by systematic rebuilding, shows a city accustomed to weathering the storms of geopolitical change, always rising again to serve its primary purpose, trade. Its economy thrived on the export of two legendary commodities, the precious purple dye extracted from murex snails and brilliantly crafted glassware, which were shipped from its harbors to distant markets. The discovery of a shipwreck off its coast, its hull filled with Cypriot copper, provides a frozen moment of this bustling maritime activity. The urban planning of its Iron Age quarters reveals a carefully organized city, with residential districts, industrial areas for dye production, and warehouses all arranged to maximize efficiency. From the domestic remains of ordinary homes, we recover the intimate details of daily life, the cooking pots, the loom weights, the children's toys that humanize this multicultural hub. The residents of Dor were practical innovators, famously adapting Phoenician shipbuilding techniques to create vessels that could carry their goods farther and faster. A perfect example of how knowledge was shared and improved upon in this cosmopolitan environment. What can Dor's layered identity teach us about integration and conflict in ancient port cities? It stands as a powerful lesson that walls are often more permeable than we think, and that the very forces of trade and proximity that create conflict can also be the same forces that forge a new, resilient, and uniquely blended way of life. The blackened layer of the Canaanite city's destruction was not the end for Hazor. From those ashes, a new city arose, its foundations laid by the people of the northern kingdom of Israel. This was not a simple village, but a deliberate, strategic revival. The Israelites chose this location for the same reason the Canaanite kings had: its command over the vital trade routes. They constructed formidable new fortifications, including a massive six-chambered gate complex that served as both a defensive choke point and a civic center. Inside the walls, they built long, pillared buildings, structures that archaeologists believe functioned as state-run warehouses for collecting and redistributing grain, oil, and wine. This was the architecture of a nascent kingdom, a physical manifestation of a central administration attempting to control its economy and secure its borders. Experts like Dr. Amnon Ben-Tor have spent decades sifting through these Iron Age layers, uncovering artifacts that paint a picture of a society in transition. They have found beautifully carved ivories, their motifs showing clear Phoenician influence, and personal seals bearing Hebrew names, evidence of a literate bureaucratic class. One of the most intimate finds was a humble pottery shard, an ostracon, inscribed with a list of Hebrew names. This simple administrative note, perhaps a record of workers or a tax list, speaks volumes about the daily functioning of this Israelite city. Yet this new society was not entirely a break from the past. A startling discovery points to the persistence of older beliefs, a clay model of a liver intricately marked with sections. This was a tool for divination, used by priests to read the will of the gods by examining the organs of sacrificed animals. Its presence in an Israelite city reveals the complex and often syncretic nature of religious practice, where the official state religion might coexist with older Canaanite rituals. Hazor's revival was impressive, but its position also made it a target. In 732 before the Common Era, the relentless Assyrian war machine under King Tiglath-Pileser III swept through the region. The city was violently destroyed, its buildings put to the torch and its population exiled, a fate recorded in both the biblical Book of Kings and the annals of the Assyrian king himself. This final destruction layer is a stark reminder of the immense pressures faced by small kingdoms in the Levant. How does Hazor's Israelite phase reflect the challenges of state building? It shows a people grappling with the monumental task of transforming a loose tribal confederation into a centralized kingdom, building administrative systems, engaging in international trade, and defining a cultural identity, all while living under the constant shadow of empires. The stones of Akko still echo with the march of crusading knights and the polyglot chatter of merchants. This is not a city that was lost, but one that has never ceased living, its foundations laid over 4,000 years ago and built upon by nearly every civilization to touch the Levantine coast. Beneath its famous Ottoman walls and winding market streets lies a deeper city, a labyrinth of subterranean crusader halls where the Knights Hospitaller once planned their campaigns. These cavernous, vaulted chambers, rediscovered in the 20th century, are a monument to the city's time as the capital of the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem, a European fortress grafted onto an ancient eastern shoreline. Yet even this dramatic chapter was just one layer in a much deeper story. Archaeologists like Dr. Mikkel Artzi have uncovered a Bronze Age palace, its very existence proving Akko was a major Canaanite power long before the Crusaders arrived. Elsewhere, intricate Roman mosaics and the sprawling foundations of the Hellenistic city of Ptolemais reveal a place perpetually at the center of the classical world. The city's wealth was not built on conquest alone. Vast sugar cane plantations and refineries established by the Crusaders turned Akko into an economic powerhouse, exporting sweetness across the Mediterranean. This prosperity is strikingly illustrated by a chance discovery, a hoard of Fatimid gold coins, a treasure hidden during some forgotten crisis that speaks to the immense flow of capital through its markets. But some of Akko's most profound secrets are not on land, but beneath the waves. Modern underwater archaeologists have turned the harbor into a new frontier of discovery. Using sonar technology to map the seabed, they have located the ghostly outlines of sunken ships and submerged structures that date back to the Phoenician era, when this was a vital port in their vast trading network. These silent wrecks are time capsules, preserving a maritime history that written records often miss. How does Akko's staggering longevity reflect the enduring importance of maritime routes? Its continuous life, from Canaanite dock to Ottoman stronghold, proves that while empires rise and fall, the sea remains a constant highway. The city itself is a living museum, its very stones a testament to the unstoppable economic and cultural currents that have always flowed through the harbors of the Levant. The sheer scale of Tel Es Safi would have intimidated any approaching army. This was Gath, the city of the Philistine giant Goliath, and its ruins reveal a metropolis of immense power and industrial might. Excavations led by Dr. Aaron Meir have uncovered a city that was one of the largest in the entire Iron Age Levant, a true capital of the Philistine Confederation. Its material culture immediately sets it apart, with vibrant pottery decorated in red and black, styles that trace a direct line back to the Aegean world, the original homeland of these seafaring people. Their identity was stamped into the very clay of their cooking pots and carved into the bones of their meals, with archaeological evidence showing a pronounced taste for pork, a stark contrast to the dietary laws of their Israelite neighbors. This was not just a cultural enclave, it was an economic powerhouse. The city contained vast industrial zones dedicated to olive oil production, with massive stone presses and storage facilities operating on a scale that suggests export, not just local consumption. This industrial organization speaks of a sophisticated, centralized economy that fueled Gath's political influence. The city's spiritual life was just as distinctive. Archaeologists uncovered the remains of a Philistine temple, and within it, a stone altar with highly unconventional, non-standard dimensions. This unique design offers a tangible glimpse into a religious practice that deliberately set itself apart from the Canaanite and Israelite traditions surrounding it. Perhaps the most electrifying find was a pottery shard inscribed with two names that are strikingly similar to Goliath. While this is not the giant himself, it demonstrates that the name was in use within the Philistine culture of that exact period, adding a fascinating historical dimension to a figure once thought to be purely legendary. The city's might, however, drew the attention of a formidable enemy. A massive siege trench, nearly 2.5 kilometers long, was dug around the city by the Aramean king Hazor around 830 before the Common Era. The destruction layer inside the city is catastrophic, a horizon of ash and collapsed buildings that corresponds perfectly with the biblical account of Hazor's conquest. Gath never fully recovered from this blow. In the centuries that followed, a much smaller Judahite settlement grew atop the ruins, its simpler pottery and different architectural style marking a clear cultural shift. The story of Gath is a powerful lesson in the fluidity of ancient identity. Through microarchaeology, scientists analyzed tiny seeds, animal bones, and chemical residues to understand how these Philistines gradually adopted local plants and customs, slowly blending with the very populations they once ruled. What does the rise and fall of this giant city reveal about the dynamics of power? It shows that even the most formidable cultural identities are not static, but are constantly being reshaped by conflict, exchange, and the relentless passage of time, humanizing a people we know best as the legendary enemies of ancient Israel. A city's hum was not just the sound of its people, but the buzz of countless bees. At Tel Rehav in the Jordan Valley, archaeologists uncovered a truly unique industry, an entire apiary dating to the 10th century before the Common Era. Rows of cylindrical clay hives were found in a dense, organized pattern designed to house the local Syrian strain of bees. This was not a small, backyard operation. It was large-scale, industrial beekeeping, a testament to an agricultural society that had mastered its environment with remarkable sophistication. The hives themselves were ingeniously designed, with a small flight hole at one end and a removable lid at the other for harvesting honey and wax without destroying the colony. For a society without refined sugar, honey was a precious commodity, a primary sweetener, a base for medicines, and a valuable trade good. Beeswax was equally vital, used for creating waterproof seals on containers, for casting metal objects using the lost wax technique, and for writing tablets. The discovery was so complete that scientists could analyze the preserved remains of the bees themselves, confirming they were a local subspecies. Even more remarkably, analysis of pollen traces found within the hives revealed the specific types of flowers, like rosemary and myrtle, that were cultivated in the surrounding fields to sustain these vital insects. This level of agricultural planning points to a highly organized and specialized economy. Tel Rehav was far more than a farming town. It was a major urban center in the northern Israelite kingdom, its streets laid out in a deliberate grid, with well-built houses and public buildings suggesting a stratified and prosperous society. Artifacts found at the site, including pottery and seals, show clear evidence of trade with Phoenician cities to the north and even with Egypt, integrating this inland city into a wide economic network. Its water management systems, channeling local springs, ensured the city's survival and the irrigation for its crops and bee pastures. A single inscription found at the site added a human dimension to the ruins, bearing the name Nimshi, a name known from the biblical books of Kings as the grandfather of the military commander Jehu. This tiny linguistic clue connects the archaeological site to the broader narrative of the region's history. The city also had a spiritual side, with a nearby sanctuary revealing evidence of cultic practices, including stands for ritual offerings. Yet, for all its agricultural ingenuity and economic connections, Tel Rehav could not withstand the shifting tides of regional power. A thick layer of ash and destruction marks its end, widely attributed to the armies of the Aramean king Hazor, the same force that devastated Gath. This violent conclusion, however, could not erase the evidence of its daily life. How did Tel Rehav's agricultural expertise contribute to its prosperity and resilience? It demonstrates that true power in the ancient world was not only held by kings and armies, but also by the farmers and beekeepers whose quiet innovations created the surplus and wealth that made civilization possible. a reminder that some of the most profound revolutions are cultivated, not conquered. A city's fate was often sealed not by an army but by a prolonged drought. The archives of Ugarit, filled with desperate pleas for grain shipments, provide a human voice to a catastrophe that was reshaping the entire region. This was not an isolated crisis, but part of a wider pattern where the very climate of the ancient Levant shifted, pushing flourishing urban centers past their breaking point. Paleoclimatologists like Dr. Harvey Weiss have reconstructed these ancient weather patterns by studying deep sediment cores from the seafloor and the growth rings of ancient trees. Their data points to dramatic fluctuations, such as the 4.2 kiloyear event, a period of severe global aridity around 2,200 years before the Common Era that triggered migrations and the collapse of empires from the Indus Valley to the Nile. In the Levant, a similar, though less severe, shift occurred at the end of the Bronze Age. As the rains failed year after year, crop yields plummeted. This scarcity led directly to famine, which in turn fueled social unrest, mass migrations, and the desperate movements of populations like the Sea Peoples, creating a domino effect of instability. The evidence is written in the earth itself, where archaeological layers of destruction and abandonment often correspond perfectly with climate data showing a sharp drop in rainfall. The cities that survived were often those that mastered their environment. Petra's ingenious water catchment system was not a luxury, it was a direct and brilliant response to living in a desert. They did not just endure their climate, they engineered a way to thrive within its constraints. The great river systems of the Nile and the Tigris and Euphrates provided a buffer for the civilizations dependent on them, their predictable floods offering a reliability that rain-fed agriculture in the Levant simply could not match. This environmental pressure is also encoded in cultural memory. Myths of great floods and cycles of fertility and desolation, found across the region's literature, can be read as poetic interpretations of very real climatic trauma. The interdisciplinary work of modern science brings this story into sharp focus. Near the Dead Sea, archaeologists have found fields that were suddenly abandoned due to salinization, the soil poisoned by irrigation in an increasingly arid climate, leaving a silent testament to a farmer's lost struggle. This long-term perspective forces us to reconsider the fall of lost cities, not as a simple matter of military conquest, but as a complex interplay of human ambition and environmental reality. So what can the ancient Levant's environmental challenges teach us about coping with climate change today? Their story is a powerful lesson in resilience and adaptation, reminding us that the most enduring civilizations are those that learn to listen to the land and water upon which they utterly depend. These 25 lost cities form a grand mosaic of the human experience. We have walked the alphabet streets of Ugarit and stood in awe before Petra's carved cliffs, uncovering not just ruins but a profound legacy of creativity and connection. These are living lessons etched in stone and clay. They show us the quiet genius of the Tel Rehav beekeepers and the stubborn endurance of Jericho's walls, a city reborn countless times. They whisper of empires that crumbled from within and those shattered by invasion, a sobering reminder of how fragile even the greatest power can be. The constant exchange of ideas, from the Phoenician alphabet to the hybrid art of Palmyra, proves that our greatest leaps forward have always happened at the crossroads. This was not a parade of isolated wonders, but a deeply interconnected world where a trade route could carry a revolutionary script and a new god with the same caravan. The true treasure unearthed is the story of our shared drive to build, to believe, and to belong. Let this journey be an invitation to look closer at the hidden layers all around you, to question the simple stories and seek out the complex truths buried by time. Consider walking in these ancient footsteps yourself, or supporting the archaeologists and conservators who fight to protect these fragile sites from looters and the elements. We would love to hear which of these lost cities captured your imagination most powerfully. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you are eager for more journeys into the mysteries of our past, subscribe for future explorations. The sands have not yet given up all their secrets. With every new season of digging, another piece of our collective story is patiently waiting for its turn.